No. Hello, everybody. How you doing? Welcome to Common Censored. I'm joined by Eleanor Goldfield. We're going to be breaking down some of the propaganda that we've been getting out of the mainstream media on this horrific conflict, war, whatever the best term is. We were discussing this beforehand because conflict sounds too light. That sounds like a propaganda term in order to make you think that a lot of people aren't dying. War doesn't work either because it sounds like two equal sides. So I don't know what to fucking call this. It seems to quickly be turning into a massacre, but
well, I think it's been a massacre. It's turning into genocide.
So we're going to get into some of the stories that the mainstream media has been pushing out to everybody that are bullshit. We're going to be revealing the truth behind those. We're going to get into Joe Biden's comments, some of them many years ago. However, they show exactly the kind of insanity that is flowing through his brain ball. And we're also going to bring you some statements. A lot of information to go through in this hour. Much of this is continuing to come forward. So.
Also, I'm going to cry. Just straight up, it's going to happen. So I'm just letting everybody know. I don't really have a problem with it. Lee says he doesn't have a problem with it. If you have a problem with it, just know it's going to happen. So then you should excuse yourself. And just.
By the way, that has nothing to do with the topic at hand. She just doesn't like doing this show. So she's going to cry. But
I'm actually going to start crying because I will repeatedly be stubbing my toe against the desk.
Yeah, it's unrelated.
Yeah.
All right. But so I thought I'd begin by showing some mainstream coverage, although this is actually some of the more accurate mainstream coverage. This is from Guardian, because I just wanted to kind of remind everybody where things stand now. Israel has cut off power, water, and fuel to Gaza until hostages are freed. Now, of course, the problem with this, and everyone wants hostages to be freed. I don't think we need to really debate that, or most people do. I don't think we need to debate that. But mass punishment against a people for, a wrong that's been committed is illegal under international law. Indiscriminate bombing, which is what Israel's involved in right now, is illegal under international law, under Geneva Conventions. There's many other conventions that have been signed on by most countries saying that's illegal, and that is war crimes. And that side of it is so rarely even mentioned, that what we're seeing right now is an incredibly powerful military perpetrating war crimes. And, I'm getting tired of saying this because I've said it on the last several live streams, but none of this is to endorse the killing of innocent civilians that may have happened with Hamas's raid, Hamas's attack. And we're going to be getting into that more in a moment, but I didn't want everybody to think that we're only going to cover the atrocities done by Israel. We're covering the entirety of the story, but part of that is acknowledging that this is an oppressor, a colonial state against an open-air prison.
A concentration camp.
A concentration camp.
I mean, because it is, right? Because they are walled in. They cannot get out. They have blocked all the exits. The only way that they're allowed to go out is with some kind of pass or some kind of, the Israeli government gives them that ability, and they've cut that off now. They've also cut off fuel and electricity and water, shit you need to live. Hospitals in Gaza are running on fuel, who knows for how long. So I don't
on stored fuel.
Right. So I don't think that that's hyperbole at all. And I mean, it's long been called an open air prison. And I think the term concentration camp, which, by the way, just to get a little nerdy and historic, was actually first used by the Spaniards in Cuba to describe what how they treated the indigenous peoples there. So that term has gone through quite some colonialist use right? So I think a lot of people think of it as like, oh, that's a term that happened during the Holocaust, but no, that term actually goes back to quite a bit before the Holocaust. So yeah,
and
trivia for you guys there.
And another thing about this is, and I don't have the quotes right now, but several of Israel's top ministers, Netanyahu, etc., are essentially calling for genocide. I mean, and so are many people who support the Zionist cause. Whereas what people are calling for on the Palestinian side is freedom in their own state generally. Whereas what people are calling for right now, and many of them, is a straight up destruction of Gaza, a genocide, turning it into a parking lot, is the phrase some of them have used. And there really is a difference on that front. And something else that I, don't know if I need to keep repeating, but some people it matters a lot, I guess. Eleanor and I are both Jewish by birth, atheist by choice. And, if that matters to people, I have been to Israel twice, but I don't think that, like, if you study what's gone on there for years and years, that you can't really see it as anything other than an apartheid state.
Yeah.
All right. I wanted to bring you one more of, the mainstream media kind of doing their job, which is a shock. But I think, honestly, this is thanks to years of activism. It has been years of activism to get the mainstream media to cover Palestine at all legitimately. This is from the AP. Under heavy bombing, Palestinians in Gaza move from place to place only to discover nowhere is safe. And it goes on to detail, individuals who were trying to get out of neighborhoods that were going to be bombed, or they thought were going to be bombed. They received, warning to leave Gaza. Meanwhile, it's impossible to leave Gaza. So those warnings are ridiculous. And this article, among others, details their attempts to find somewhere safe. Many of them trying to find somewhere safe for their children. 50% of Palestinians are under 18. So there's a lot of children, and trying to find a place that's safe for them is nearly impossible, because they find a place and then that gets bombed, or next door gets bombed, and then they try and find something new, and just whole swaths are being turned to rubble. And of course, this means the endless death of innocent men, women, and children. And we'll get into more of this in a few moments, but in terms of the truth as to how many innocent men, women, and children are being killed or were killed by Hamas, it seems like we may never get the truth. Yes, every Israeli served at some time as IDF, or almost all of them. And Eleanor and I were discussing this. We don't believe that means that because you were in the military 10 years ago, everyone's an open target. I don't know that Hamas believes that either. But
well, I mean, it's hard to stay on
topic.
I know. I don't know if you want me to dive into that right now. Do you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm gonna to let everybody know what we're about to cover in a few minutes. I'm gonna cover how ridiculous the beheading children story is that the mainstream media ran with. But we can do that in a few minutes. So let's do this first.
So, first of all, I want to mention or respond, I guess, to a couple of comments that I've been seeing in the chat. There, people are saying that it's not an equal war, and that's absolutely correct. And somebody wrote that each side is trying to annihilate the other. That is incorrect. It has been so. Jews have lived in the area that was previously known as Palestine for 6,000 years, right? Since there have been Jews. And many of them lived there quite happily, relatively okay with the various other religions that all claim the same homeland, or not the same homeland, the same Holy Land, until Israel was created as a state. And so a lot of the Palestinian perspective is, look, we're fine with Jews being here. They've been here, right? We are not fine with Jews coming and stealing our land out from under us and stealing our homes. That is not okay. And so that's the difference. These Zionists feel the right and the need to annihilate the Palestinians because of this colonialist project that is Zionism. Palestinians want to survive and have their homes left. These are two totally different perspectives. So it is not one side trying to annihilate the other. It is one side trying to annihilate the other, while the other side is like, I just want my home and my life. So it is not an equal, the ideologies are also not matched in terms of their desires. What was the thing? Oh, right. Okay. So there's so much fucking propaganda out there. And I don't fault anyone for getting pulled in multiple directions. Like, it is just a fucking madhouse out there. But it's important to recognize that the stories about civilians dying in Israeli civilians dying is true. And as a friend of mine who's been a reporter about Palestine for a long time said, we don't know how they've died, if they died because of fire from the IDF, because IDF is just shooting all over the fucking place. We don't know if they died via Palestinian militants. We just don't fucking know. And we might never know because it's such a mess, right? And we can also accept that and grieve for them, even when we understand that Israel has a conscription program, right? Where you have to be a part of the IDF. And no, actually a lot of Sweden has this program, not part of the IDF, part of the you have to do a certain amount of time for the Swedish military. And so the argument that's coming through with that is that because of this, there's no such thing as a Israeli civilian. Now, this is problematic for a lot of reasons, but primarily because it creates this space where anybody can be shot and killed, and it should not elicit any kind of reaction with grief and sadness because, oh well, they were a militant. And this is kind of fucked up because this is exact same kind of dehumanizing thinking that the United States uses when talking about Afghanistan or Iraq. Well, they were a militant. Well, how the fuck do you know that?
And we literally changed the term combatant. Initially, it meant they had to literally be, Taliban with a gun. We changed it, and I believe it was under Obama, but maybe it initially changed under Bush, to a combatant meant anyone in Afghanistan of any male of military age in the area of a target area. So basically, if a bomb lands that the U.S. has dropped from a drone and it kills a male age, I don't know what they consider military age, but 16 to 90, then they're a militant. Then they're a combatant. Didn't matter if that 16-year-old knew anything about it, had a gun, none of that mattered. So they changed the term of combatant to basically mean anyone.
So this is a dehumanizing way of looking at things. And furthermore, even if you were to accept, okay, well, 90% of the civilians killed and served in the IDF recently, let's just say, which is completely fucking wrong. For those of us, and I'm sure that there are several, because if you're anywhere in our age range, then you definitely have friends who have been a part of the U.S. war machine. Do you not grieve if your friend comes back in a flag-draped casket? Like, does that mean that grief is inappropriate? Even though you know that they were murdered by people who were defending their homelands from U.S. invasion? That's not how our thinking should work, right? Our thinking should not, and that is a different case, because obviously these people would have been in uniform actually, at war, whereas an Israeli civilian, even if they served in the IDF, would not necessarily be in uniform right then and there. So again, it is just for the service of dehumanizing these Israeli people. And look, I'm not saying that I don't understand the rage and anger from where this is coming from. I just don't think it helps to toe the line of the dehumanizing side, the imperialist colonialist side, if we want to actually create a future that is just and that has freedom for everyone. And another argument that I saw, which is fucking ridiculous, is settlers are not civilians. Okay, coming to you from Piscataway land in the so-called United States, if I got fucking murdered, am I not a civilian because I too am a settler on indigenous land in the so-called United States? That thinking does not fucking work. So again, I am not saying that we have to do this. And I actually tweeted about this. We do not have to compare grief, and we shouldn't compare like, oh, my pain is worse than yours, or whatever the fuck. This has nothing to do with diminishing the pain and suffering of Palestinians and understanding that these Israeli civilians died because of Israeli apartheid. It is not,
Right.
It is not going against that fact. It is saying, and also, I am fucking angry and I am disgusted by Israeli apartheid, and I am fucking like so I fucking can't even have the words for how pissed and distraught I am at the use of Jewish rage and sadness and grief for perpetuating genocide. And also, I grieve for Israeli civilians. I can do both, everyone. We can and we should do both. And that is the point that I think is really important to highlight here.
And everyone should remember, which you also mentioned, that that blood is it's on the hands of the Israeli state, right, the Israeli government that has made these choices over many years to continue to exploit and murder and maim and harm the Palestinians. So when you go, oh my God, can you believe this civilian? And let's assume again that many of them were civilians. Can you believe the civilian was murdered? And it's like, your response should be, it's horrific. I can't believe the Israeli apartheid state would do this. Like that there should be a connection there as to what laid the ground for this to happen. Now, there are also many reports of these Hamas fighters going into kibbutz kibbutzim, which is the plural of kibbutz, and avoiding killing innocent people and saying, you know, our fight's not with you. They basically were taking over many areas, so they needed to control them in one way or another, and they fought those who fought. So call that what you may, but there are many reports of that as well. And again, I don't know that we will ever get the truth. But I do have some truth coming up on the beheaded baby story.
Yeah.
But let's do this real quick.
This is a really this is a good organization. I recommend folks check out If Not Now and Jewish Voice for Peace in terms of American Jewish organizations that have released really powerful and important statements about what's going on. This one's from If Not Now. You can follow them on Instagram, ifnotnow.org. They said, "We are mourning. We have lost people. We are horrified by the scale of the violence, and we are in so much pain right now. But we refuse to let our grief be used to justify revenge or genocide of Palestinians. Our pain is not your weapon. Our grief is not your excuse. Stop using Jewish pain to justify Israeli massacres of Palestinians." And this reminds me of a point that that I brought up with a recent conversation with Nora Barrows Friedman from the Electronic Intifada. There is no safety in genocide. And the whole argument for the creation of a Jewish state was, besides, colonialist sycophancy, is the idea of safety for Jewish people. There is no such thing as safety in genocide. You will never be safe so long as you oppress others. And we see that throughout the world, right? That's why literally bankers talk about being like losing sleep because they're afraid of the pitchfork people, right? Because they know that their existence demands oppression. So when you have when you understand, the fear of the settler is real, and there is no safety in genocide. So the idea that we could ever gain safety from this is ridiculous. And
in fact, yeah, you're doing the opposite. You're strengthening anti-Semitism. You're strengthening the desire for people to fight against all Jews, which again would be going after innocent people. All of this is a very simplistic worldview to say all Palestinians behave like this, all Jews behave like that. They all believe this thing. No, we fucking don't. So let's see. Should I now go to the other story? Yeah, we'll go to that one next. Thanks everybody for being here, by the way. Please click thumbs up and share. And if you're on Rumble or YouTube, click follow or subscribe, and then click the bell icon afterwards. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, this has been a major story. It has just went wild, like wildfire across the mainstream media, across social media, that many children had been beheaded by Hamas, children, babies, etc. And in fact, here is Joe Biden's this fucking guy.
I just can't with this guy anymore. I swear to
Here is Joe Biden speaking about it. And I think they show on the screen as I play it that the White House has since retracted what he said, has put out statements saying that he misspoke. But anyway, watch him saying he's actually seen videos of beheaded children.
Never really thought that I would see and have confirmed.
Hold on, I didn't know if I missed the first part there.
Never really thought that I would see and have confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children. I never thought I'd ever. Anyway,
doesn't even know.
But there are countries in the region that are trying to be of some help, including Arab nations, trying to be of some help. So, anyway.
This guy doesn't know what fucking planet he's on, okay?
But you know why he never thought he'd see that? Because he didn't fucking see it. That's why he never thought he'd see it. So there he is, basically telling the American people and the world that there is video of terrorists beheading children that he has seen, that the president of the United States has seen. Now, since that...
Yes, to the person who asked, is this like the Iraqi incubator story? Yes.
We're getting to that.
Good call.
We're getting to that.
Friend.
How dare you jump ahead in my research? So... can you move your arm? Thank you. Sorry.
I got broad shoulders, Lee.
So hold on, let me play this again. So this is back in 1991. This a 16-year-old girl, Kuwaiti, gave this testimony to Congress, and it actually had a big influence on manufacturing consent for war, the first Iraq war. And I'm just going to play this 10-second clip of her as in front of Congress.
I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators, and left the children to die on the cold floor.
Also, I'm just envisioning a bunch of people walking out with incubators. Like she said, they took the incubators.
Her point was they wanted the technology or the tech or whatever, the piece of the parts.
What?
Who knows?
Making
parts, but
hot dogs? Like, what is
they
this
were
story?
They were cooking some poached eggs that they wanted. Anyway,
even just the simplest like analysis of the story would be like, they walked out with incubators?
Well, and here's the thing. Your average soldier of any stripe, it's very rare that you get to a level of hatred and disgust. Now, from a distance where you push a button and a bomb's dropped, that's a different thing. But of walking up to a slew of babies and leaving them on a floor, it's like almost unheard of. But anyway, this helped manufacture consent for war, helped the American people get behind bombing the shit out of Iraq, And it turned out that it was completely made up, completely bullshit. She was actually coached by a PR firm that was hired for this moment. And they didn't happen to mention she's the daughter, and was then as well, the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States. So this was a fully cooked PR bullshit.
Fully cooked, really?
Oh, the incubators?
Come on, man. Okay, so but the point is, and as the person commented in the chat there, this is a story that gets repeated in different different variations, right? Because no matter what you believe, like, and if no matter what quote unquote side you're on, you have to. There is no moral argument that justifies the killing of babies, right? It's to the point that it's become almost like a joke in the zeitgeist, right? Like, oh, killing babies, like that's that's what the left does, or that's what these it's like it's become a joke. But it is very useful for the establishment to use that, because what are you going to do? Oh, well, it was justified because no, you can't say that.
Right.
There's no comeback for that.
It takes all of the moral discussion out of it. Whereas if you say Hamas fighters went in and they were fighting IDF, then you get into a discussion about, well, did they have a right to fight back? Were they fighting soldiers? It's a whole thing. Whereas if you say killing babies, I've never met anyone who's like, look, it was the right thing to do.
Right.
So it really does short circuit the moral discussion, which is why it's useful and why it's being used right now. Okay, so
I think you just opened it. Oh no.
No, I showed that one. So that was showing how that was a fake news. Anyway, to get back to now, here is one of my favorite journalists who I worked with for a while, Alan McLeod.
Alan McLeod's great.
And he's knocking it out of the park the past week.
He's excellent at finding bullshit headlines.
Yeah, I don't know how much time he spends looking at these garbage newspapers, but so these are headlines. I think it's mostly British. Many of these are like front page stories. Horror at the pure evil of beheading. Another one is 40 babies murdered by Hamas. Another one is, this was a Holocaust pure and simple, talking about the babies being beheaded. The next one says Hamas cut the throats of babies in a massacre. And Alan says British biggest newspapers are all leading with unsourced atrocity propaganda that even the IDF has refused to confirm. So as this story continued to ripple around the internet and people were losing their minds over it, it has now been fully debunked. And let's see. I don't want to show that one. That's this one. Gray Zone has found the initial source of this bullshit story. Oh, so many clicks. Okay.
You're doing great.
I'm trying. And the source of that claim is an Israeli settler leader who incited riots to wipe out a Palestinian village after an Israeli reserve soldier named David Ben Zion told a reporter that Palestinian militants cut off heads of babies. Biden, Netanyahu, and the international media amplified the dubious claim. The Gray Zone has identified Ben Zion as a fanatical settler leader who incited riots by demanding a Palestinian town be wiped out. So they've now found the one source of this completely bullshit story.
Who just
made
vomited it out. Yeah.
Just said it. And they all ran with it. And it's even Joe Biden was saying he saw video of it.
But don't forget, he marched with Nelson Mandela.
He did march with Nelson Mandela. So there's that. But this is how this shit is done. This is how propaganda is done. And the thing is, even though it's been retracted, even though even the White House has said, yeah, Biden was a little off his rocker on that one.
Well, then even the IDF is like, I can't confirm that. Even the
IDF can't confirm it. Despite all of that, people still believe this shit because they don't see the retraction, and people are still posting it, and they stand around the water cooler and 5 people go, yeah, they did. They beheaded babies. And that's how propaganda works. Even as all of it is outed and we see that it was all bullshit to begin with. This
Yeah,
is how it
doesn't matter.
works.
Doesn't matter.
And just on this point of the media and why is it part of the reason it is so pro-Israel is pro-apartheid state is that if you stand up in even a slight way in the past about and spoke out for Palestinians, or even just said we should hear both sides. So some of these reporters that I'm about to share just basically said they basically just also wanted to bring the Palestinian viewpoint into the discussion. But Alan has also put together headlines of networks firing correspondents or reporters because they dared say free Palestine or give that side of the story. One is CNN fired Mark Lamont Hill, who was kind of a rising star over there, in the wake of remarks criticizing Israel and calling for a free Palestine. I mean, does that sound that drastic? He didn't say, Israelis should be murdered. He just called for a free Palestine. Another one is AP fired a Jewish journalist after pro-Palestinian tweets. The Guardian fired columnist Nathan Robinson after a joke tweet about military aid to Israel.
Even like
just a joke. And then my friend Katie Halper lost her job at The Hill, which supposedly Rising at The Hill is supposed to be, or at least have, left-wing viewpoints on there. But she simply did a 5-minute report, and it was no comedy, no snark. It was like straight up quotes from human rights organizations, which even Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have called an apartheid state. And she basically just made the argument it is an apartheid state by showing what these organizations had said. She wasn't just giving her own opinion saying this fucking apartheid state. She was like, Human Rights Watch says it's apartheid state. Amnesty International says it's apartheid state. These are not leftist organizations. These, in many ways, Human Rights Watch has worked to actually further the U.S. empire.
Well, the UN says that, has called for an end to the Israelis' bombardment of Gaza. The UN is certainly not like some fucking leftist cabal. It's just a fact. If you look up the textbook definition of apartheid, Israel's it. Sorry, that's... Yeah, and of course, Alan wasn't putting them all in there. There are others who were pushed out or fired. Sometimes they're pushed out in a way that is unclear. They say something in support of Palestine, and then a couple of months later, weirdly, the company decides to not keep them there. A good example is Rick Sanchez, who I worked with at RT, but he'd been at all the major networks. But his time at CNN basically came to a close soon after he had on a Israeli representative or someone giving the Israeli viewpoints. And he basically just asked the Palestinian view of things. He said, but haven't a lot of them, types of things haven't a lot of them been killed by this bombing of Gaza? Those type of questions. And he was pushed out soon after. So this is how you end up with a media that is so insanely propagandistic for the Israeli state. Also, the fact that Israel is basically a vassal state to the United States, so we kind of want it there. Should I jump to that one? Because I didn't even mean to have that segue. Hey, for once we had a good segue. There we go. Hey, you're good at segues.
This is Joe Biden. Again, this is from many years ago, but he has said the same thing
over and over
again. Let's see. All right.
It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
He's like, let me say that again.
He's like, I'm going to keep saying this thing that you should be horrified by.
What the fuck? I mean, although the U.S. is very well acquainted with settler colonialism, so I mean, sure.
And here he is recently.
Yeah, and I've often said, Mr. President, if there were, if there were not in Israel, we'd have to invent one.
Like,
He's not done saying it.
Also, I like how that started with that's the best $3 billion we spend. Like, clearly, the money that is required for healthcare or protecting the environment or education, it's like, fuck all that. The best money that we spend is perpetuating apartheid in Israel. Boom. Like, what the fuck?
Well, and he's saying so clearly that the U.S. needs Israel as an outpost in the region to control other states. I mean, this is what he's discussing is straight up imperialism, and he should be ashamed, but instead he says it again and again throughout the years.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like you know that one-hit wonder, the musician that has to keep playing the same song over and over. He like said one thing, and Zionist really liked it, and so he's like, "That's the quote I'm going with." Like, okay.
Let's see here. Here's Steven Semler giving us
Steven
some...
Semler does great work. If y'all, we share it frequently on the show. But you can check out his work on what is that, Substack? Yeah,
Substack. But who is it that reposts his stuff a lot? Is it radindiemedia.com? If you guys need news outside the corporate media, go to radindiemedia.com every day. It's the website we created that is completely free for you to see all kinds of news outside your corporate media.
So Semler does a great job of showing with visuals the cost, and not just in terms of money, but of military aid. And this one is about military aid to Israel since the 40s. So since the 40s, I can't remember if it's 1940. If you go back, I don't know, but 1947. Basically, Israel has received $124 billion in military aid from the United States. Oh, since 1946. That, what? Like, Jesus Christ. And I know, like, it's so hard to wrap your head around these numbers. Like, I don't know what $124 billion means. Like, I mean,
it's very difficult to even imagine that amount of money.
So anyway, so this is that, like, monetary evidence. And of course, there's the propaganda support for Israel, which is incredibly detrimental as well, which we've already discussed. But the actual monetary aid for Israel, hundreds of billions of dollars, it is a direct support for this apartheid state. And it makes the United States complicit. And so it means that we as Americans have a large role to play in ensuring the end of Israel as an apartheid state. And that, because I think a lot of times we feel like, oh, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like, I'm all the way over here. Yeah, you are over here. We are over here. And we, as children of empire, of the largest empire the world's ever seen, that perpetuates colonialism and imperialism and violence, the violence that goes with that across the globe, we have a huge responsibility and opportunity to ensure that those structures of oppression are torn down. So I'm not going to sit here and say, call your member of Congress, because your member of Congress doesn't give a shit about you. I think we've established that in the past. I'm saying that we need, just like anything else, we need to make it untenable to have any other stance, just like they did in South Africa. It has to be untenable for the so-called West to support the apartheid regime any longer. And so that's what we have to do. We have to engage in direct action. There was an action today up in Massachusetts at Elbit Systems, which is one of the, if not the largest weapons manufacturers for Israel. That's the kind of shit that needs to happen. And the bucking of the propaganda, whether that be the beheading babies bullshit or this was totally unprovoked. No, it was not unprovoked. This is 75 years of ethnic cleansing, if not, like what we're seeing now, outright genocide. And so I think that it's important that we recognize our role as Americans and also American Jews, if they're fellow American Jews listening and watching, that we have this opportunity and this responsibility to break this connection and this vital lifeline of support to Israeli apartheid.
Absolutely. So we're about to get to Eleanor's article about the difference between Zionism and Judaism. And there's so many great points to be made on that front. We're also going to dig into some of the deeper points that you will never get from your mainstream media about nationalism and statism and how those play a significant role in what's going on now, about the propaganda and the conflict, the massacre that is happening right now. By the way, I should just throw in here that already the number killed in Gaza by Israeli bombing has surpassed even the largest estimates of numbers killed by Hamas. So already the U.S. is beyond, the U.S. and Israel. I keep doing that, but what's the difference? Already the U.S. and Israel are beyond the death toll of Hamas. And they, unlike what we've heard from many accounts of Hamas trying to hit military targets. Now, again, I'm not saying no innocent civilians were killed. It seems like many were. However, it seems like their goal was to take over areas, whereas Israel's goal is to literally obliterate apartment buildings. I mean, literally pancake whole city blocks. And of course, the number of dead children and elderly and innocent people is just catastrophic. It's just unbelievable. Now, that's the intended goal of Israel. That's what they know they're doing. But anyway, we're going to do all of that. We're going to talk about all of that at rumble.com/leadcamp. If you're watching on Rumble, then nothing will change. Also, if you're watching at locals, leadcamp.net, nothing will change there. So we're going to cover all of that, and it's free to watch at rumble.com/leadcamp. Please join us over there, rumble.com/leadcamp. And if you want to support this show and see it keep going, become a member at leadcamp.net. You get my book for free. You get all kinds of other perks. So leadcamp.net, 38 cents an episode, and you'll keep this show going. And last thing before we move on, it's finally here. This Saturday is my live stand-up comedy Zoom show. Thank goodness it has nothing to do with Israel and Palestine. It is completely unrelated to Israel and Palestine. So live stand-up comedy Zoom show. It's only $5. It's two special guest openers, musician James Kennedy and former Redacted Tonight correspondent Jafar Khan. That's all at leecamp.simpletix.com. Let's see if I can find that. I never can find the right. All right. leecamp.simpletix.com. leecamp.simpletix.com. Okay. So now we're going to head over to Rumble and I will.
Please do hang with us there because we're going to be talking about the important distinction between Zionism and Judaism. And for anybody who wants to discuss this, I think these are going to be important points to bring up in your conversations. We're also going to be continuing to talk about this issue, and I'll probably cry. So if you want to see any of that,
if you want to see my crying display,
it was on a display. It'll be genuine.
No, I know.
I've been,
the stuff you're reading